What hurts more than betrayal from friends? It's when your own children, the ones you raised and sacrificed everything for, turn their backs on you. This is not just a story about loss. It's proof that silence is never weakness. Linda had never asked for much in life. She grew up in a small town, in a modest home where every meal was shared, every problem was talked through, and every child knew the meaning of family. From the time she was young, she dreamed not of riches or recognition, but of having a family of her own, a family she could love, protect, and dedicate herself to completely. And that dream in many ways came true. Linda married young, to a man who worked hard and smiled easily. Together, they raised 3 children. Their house was never the biggest on the block, but it was warm. The walls held the scent of home-cooked meals, and the floors carried the laughter of children running barefoot in the summer. For years, Linda lived a life of constant sacrifice. She worked 2 jobs when times were tough. She stayed up late sewing clothes when money was too tight to buy new ones. On cold nights, she skipped her own blanket just to make sure her kids had an extra layer of warmth. And when bills piled up, she chose not to buy herself new shoes, even though hers were worn thin at the soles. Her children never knew how much she gave up. She never told them. She didn't want them to feel guilty. She only wanted them to feel safe. Her husband passed away earlier than anyone expected. His death was sudden, a quiet mourning that turned into a lifetime of silence. Linda was left alone with 3 children still in school, bills on the kitchen table, and no idea how she would carry the load. But she did. She always did. She found work as a receptionist during the day, and at night she cleaned offices. Weekends weren't for rest. They were for laundry, for cooking, for organizing, for making sure her children had what they needed for Monday morning. No one was there to applaud her. No one handed her awards. But she didn't do it for recognition. She did it for them. As the years passed, her children grew. They went to college, found jobs in the city, built lives of their own. Linda was proud. She told everyone who would listen about her son's promotion, about her daughter's new apartment, about the youngest who had just passed the bar exam. To neighbors and co-workers, she always spoke with pride. "They've done well," she would say with a soft smile. "They've made something of themselves." But inside, there was a loneliness she could not quite name. Her children rarely visited. Phone calls came less and less. Holidays that once filled the house with chatter and warmth were now quiet affairs. Sometimes a quick dinner, sometimes just a card in the mail. Linda told herself it was normal. Children grew up. They got busy. That's just how life was. Still, she kept the house exactly the same, as if waiting for them to return. The old dining table stayed polished, though it hadn't held more than 1 plate in years. The family photos remained on the walls, each frame dusted carefully every week. The upstairs bedrooms were still made, with clean sheets and folded blankets, though no one had slept in them for months, sometimes years. She never said it out loud, but she was waiting. Always waiting. One summer evening, Linda prepared a meal the way she always used to when the children were small. Roasted chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans with garlic, and her husband's favorite apple pie. She imagined the sound of the front door opening, the rush of footsteps, the laughter spilling into the kitchen. But the only sound was the ticking clock on the wall. She ate alone at one end of a long table set for 4. The truth was becoming harder to deny. Her children had moved on and they no longer needed her. Or perhaps they thought they didn't. What Linda didn't know, what she couldn't yet imagine, was that her silence, her patience, her endurance would soon be tested in ways she never expected. She had carried her children through every storm. But now, the storm was not outside their home. It was inside their hearts. It began with small comments. Her oldest son, visiting briefly one Sunday, looked around the living room and said, "Mom, this house is too big for you. You should sell it. Move into a smaller place." Her daughter, busy with her new job, added during a rushed phone call, "You could use the money, Mom. Why keep such an old house? It's just sitting there. Even the youngest, the one she thought understood her the most, sighed and said, "It doesn't make sense for you to stay here alone. The house is worth a fortune now." Each word was a knife, sharp not because of greed, but because of the indifference behind it. They didn't see the house the way she did. To them, it was property. To her, it was memory. It was the hallway where little feet once pattered. It was the kitchen where she had kissed skinned knees and bandaged small hands. It was the bedroom where she and her husband had whispered dreams late into the night. But Linda said nothing. She only nodded, pressed her lips into a thin line, and changed the subject. That night, alone in her bedroom, she sat at the edge of her bed and whispered into the darkness, "They don't understand." Not yet. The betrayal didn't arrive like a thunderclap. It came quietly, slowly, in the kind of conversation you might overhear when no one realizes you're listening. It was a Saturday afternoon. Linda had just finished folding laundry and was carrying a basket down the hall when she heard voices drifting in from the living room. All 3 children were there, gathered around the coffee table. They hadn't come to visit her, not really. They had come to talk to each other. At first, she smiled. It had been months since she had seen them all together. She paused in the hallway, not wanting to interrupt, simply savoring the sound of their voices. But then the words reached her ears. "This place is worth a lot now," her oldest son was saying. "The market's hot. If we sell it, we could each take a share. It doesn't make sense to let Mom sit here alone." Her daughter sighed, tapping her phone against her palm. Exactly. She doesn't need a big house. A condo or senior living would be better, more practical. We could put the money to better use. The youngest, the one Linda had always believed to be closest to her heart, hesitated before speaking. "I know she loves this place. But think about it. Repairs, taxes, upkeep, it's just too much. She's not getting any younger. Selling is the smart move." Linda froze in the hallway, the laundry basket heavy in her arms. The voices felt like hammers striking against her chest. Not once did they mention her feelings. Not once did they call it her home. To them, it was simply a piece of property, a number on a real estate listing. She stepped back quietly, her breath unsteady. She didn't want them to know she had heard. She walked into her bedroom, set down the basket, and sat on the edge of her bed. Her hands trembled as she clasped them together. The children she had raised with such care were now treating her life's foundation as something disposable. Memories flooded her mind. She could see her husband painting the walls of the house on the day they moved in, laughing as the children smeared their small hands across the fresh color. She could hear the echo of birthdays, the thump of music at graduations, the sound of doors slamming during teenage arguments. Every corner of that house held a piece of her story, and now they wanted to strip it away. Later that evening, they came to her with polite voices and rehearsed expressions. Her oldest son placed a folder on the table. Inside were brochures for retirement communities, glossy pictures of smiling seniors playing cards and doing water aerobics. "Mom," he said gently, "this could be a fresh start for you. You'd have company, activities. It's better than rattling around in this old place by yourself." Her daughter leaned forward. "We're just thinking of what's best for you, Mom. You don't need all this space. We could help you move." "It would be easy." The youngest added softly, "Please don't take this the wrong way. We just want to help." Linda listened, her face calm. She didn't argue. She didn't shout. She didn't tell them about the ache in her chest or the way her husband's last words still echoed in her heart. She simply nodded, thanked them for caring, and excused herself to make tea. In the kitchen, with her back to them, she felt her eyes fill with tears. She placed the kettle on the stove and gripped the counter, steadying herself. She would not break down in front of them. She would not give them the satisfaction of thinking she was fragile. That night, when the house was quiet again, Linda went to her bedroom. She opened the drawer of her nightstand and pulled out a small wooden box, old and worn. The hinges squeaked as she lifted the lid. Inside were documents she had not touched in years: her husband's will, the property deed, and a letter written in his careful handwriting. Her fingers trembled as she unfolded the letter. The paper was yellowed with age, but the words were clear. "Linda, if you are reading this, it means I am no longer there to protect what we built. This house, this land, it belongs to you. It is your safe place, your anchor. Promise me you will keep it, not for the money, but for the roots it holds. One day the children may forget what it means. But you must remember." Linda pressed the letter to her chest, her tears falling freely now. Her husband had known. He had seen the possibility of this moment long before it arrived. The next morning she sat at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee, staring at the stack of papers before her. She was not powerless. She was not trapped. For the first time in years, she felt a spark of strength rise inside her. She realized something important. Silence was not surrender. Her children thought her quietness meant weakness, but they were wrong. The betrayal had cut deep, but it had also awakened something stronger. Linda knew the time would come to speak, not in anger, not in desperation, but with calm certainty. She would show them that what they saw as a piece of property was, in truth, the foundation of her life. And she would remind them that a mother's silence can hold more power than all the voices in the room. The morning after her children's visit, Linda woke up earlier than usual. The house was still, the kind of stillness that carries both comfort and sorrow. She sat on the edge of her bed, the wooden box resting on her lap. Her fingers brushed over the worn lid, and she took a deep breath before opening it again. Inside were the papers she had guarded for years: deeds, savings documents, her husband's will, and that letter written in his steady hand. She read it once more, as if the words could lend her strength. "This house belongs to you. Promise me you will keep it. One day the children may forget, but you must remember." Linda closed her eyes. She whispered, "I remember." For decades she had carried the weight of sacrifice silently. She had endured long nights, endless work, and the loneliness of widowhood. But she realized now that silence could be a shield, not a weakness. And within this box lay her shield. Later that day, she invited her children to return. They arrived with cautious expressions, perhaps expecting her to agree to their plan. Her daughter carried a binder full of financial projections. Her oldest son brought more brochures for retirement homes. The youngest looked uneasy, but hopeful. They gathered in the living room, sitting on the same couch where they had once watched cartoons as children. Linda entered quietly, carrying the wooden box in her arms. She set it on the coffee table right between them and sat down across from her children. For a long moment, she said nothing. The room was thick with tension. Then, with deliberate care, she opened the box and placed the papers one by one on the table. The deed, the savings book, and finally, the letter. Her children looked confused. "Mom, what is this?" her daughter asked. Linda folded her hands in her lap. Her voice was calm, steady. "This," she said, nodding to the papers, "is the truth. This house is not for sale. It belongs to me. Your father left it in my name, with his wishes written clearly. He wanted me to protect it because he knew there might come a day when you would forget what this place means." Her oldest son frowned, flipping through the documents. The seal, the signatures, the official stamps, they were undeniable. His confidence faltered. Her daughter shifted uncomfortably in her seat. "Mom, we weren't trying to hurt you. We just thought—" Linda raised a hand gently, stopping her mid-sentence. "I know what you thought. You thought I was alone, fragile, powerless. You thought silence meant surrender. But you were wrong. I stayed quiet all these years because I wanted peace, because I trusted that you would remember the sacrifices made for you. But now I see that you need to be reminded. The youngest, eyes downcast, whispered, "We didn't mean to betray you." Linda leaned forward slightly. Her gaze softened, but her words were firm. Betrayal doesn't always come with shouting or slammed doors. Sometimes it comes with polite suggestions and careful plans made behind someone's back. You spoke of this house as if it were just bricks and wood, but to me it is life itself. It is the memory of your father, the laughter of your childhood, the proof of everything I gave. You treated it like a burden, but it is a gift. Silence filled the room. None of the children spoke. They had no argument, no justification. Linda picked up the letter, unfolded it, and laid it before them. Her husband's words stared back at them, undeniable, unshakable. One day the children may forget, but you must remember. She looked at each of them, one by one. I remember. And now you will too. The weight of her words settled heavy in the air. The oldest son swallowed hard. The daughter blinked back tears. The youngest finally raised his eyes to meet hers, guilt written across his face. Linda didn't shout. She didn't accuse. She didn't need to. The truth was louder than anger. After a long pause, she continued, her voice gentler now. I don't want to fight with you. I don't want to hold anger in my heart, but I will not let you take away what your father and I built. This house will remain, as it always has, the heart of our family. If you wish to come here, come with love, not with plans to strip it away. If you wish to be part of my life, remember that respect is worth more than money. Her daughter finally whispered, Mom, we didn't see it that way. We thought we were helping. Linda's expression softened, but her words stayed steady. Sometimes help is not what people need. Sometimes what they need is understanding. And you failed to understand me. The room grew quiet again. The children shifted in their seats, uncomfortable, ashamed. Linda reached for the wooden box, closed it carefully, and placed it back in her lap. This house stays with me. That is the end of this conversation. But you should think carefully about what you value, because one day, when I am gone, it won't be money or property that you miss. It will be the love you forgot to honor. Her children sat in silence. No one dared argue further. That night after they left, Linda sat alone in the living room. The silence was heavy, but this time it didn't feel like weakness. It felt like strength. She had spoken. She had revealed the truth. And now, the choice was theirs. She whispered into the stillness, as if to her husband, I remembered. And they will too. The following week was heavy with silence. Linda's children called less than usual. When they did, their voices were clipped, cautious, as if every word might break something fragile. But Linda was not afraid of silence anymore. She had lived with it for years. Silence was no longer her enemy. It was her companion, her armor. One rainy afternoon they returned. This time it was not casual. They entered the house with stiff shoulders, their eyes avoiding hers. The air in the living room was thick with unspoken tension. Linda sat in her chair, calm, waiting. She knew why they had come. Her oldest son was the first to speak. Mom, he began, his voice rehearsed, we've been thinking about what you said. We understand you don't want to sell the house, but you have to see it from our perspective. It's too much for you. It's not safe for you to live here alone. Linda folded her hands in her lap. I hear you, but you're not listening to me. This is not about convenience. This is about respect. This house is my life's work, and I will not let you take it from me. Her daughter leaned forward, frustration flickering in her eyes. We're not trying to take anything, Mom. We're trying to help. You don't need a big house at your age. You should be somewhere with people around you, where you won't be lonely. Linda's voice was steady. Lonely is not about walls or square footage. Lonely is about hearts that forget to care. And right now, I feel lonelier surrounded by my own children than I ever have sitting here by myself." The words landed like stones in the room. The youngest, who had been silent, finally looked up. His eyes wavered. "We didn't mean for you to feel that way." Linda met his gaze. "Intentions matter less than actions. You spoke of me as if I were a burden. You spoke of this house as if it were a transaction. Do you know what it felt like to hear that from the people I gave my whole life to?" No one answered. She stood slowly, walked to the mantel, and picked up an old framed photo. It was of her and her husband, holding 3 children with wide smiles, taken on the very first day they moved into the house. She held it up for them to see. "This house isn't just wood and bricks," she said softly. "It's where your father painted your names on the bedroom doors. It's where we celebrated birthdays with store-bought cakes because we couldn't afford more. It's where I stayed up nights sewing costumes for your school plays, baking cookies for your class, ironing shirts for your interviews. This place holds the weight of every sacrifice, every joy, every tear. And you wanted to sell it as if it were nothing." Her oldest son rubbed the back of his neck, looking down at the floor. Her daughter bit her lip, blinking fast. The youngest shifted in his chair, his hands clenched. Linda placed the photo back on the mantel, then turned to face them again. "I will not shout. I will not fight, but I will not let you forget. Silence may have made you believe I was weak, but today I tell you this. My silence was love, not surrender, and love is stronger than greed." The room fell still. Her words carried more weight than anger ever could. For the first time, her children seemed to see her, not as someone fragile and fading, but as the woman who had carried them through storms they barely remembered. Her daughter's eyes filled with tears. "Mom, we didn't think. We were selfish. We only saw the money, not the meaning." The youngest nodded slowly, his voice quiet. "You've always been there for us. We forgot what that cost you. We forgot what this house means." Her oldest son exhaled deeply, his pride cracking. "I thought I was protecting you. But maybe I was protecting myself, from responsibility, from guilt." "I'm sorry." Linda's sternness softened, though her resolve remained. She sat back down, her hands resting calmly on her knees. "I don't need apologies. I need change. If you want to be in my life, if you want to call this your home, you must come with gratitude, with respect, not with plans to erase what was built with love." The children sat in silence. This time, it was not an empty silence. It was a silence of recognition, of shame, of awakening. Finally, the youngest whispered, "We'll do better, Mom." Linda nodded slowly. "Then let this be a beginning, not an end." The confrontation was not about winning or losing. It was about awakening, about showing her children the truth they had forgotten. For years, Linda's silence had protected them, but now her voice had awakened them. That night, after they left, Linda stood at the window. The rain had stopped. The air was fresh, carrying the faint scent of wet earth. She whispered to the quiet house, "We are not finished. But at least they are beginning to see." And for the first time in a long while, she felt not just the weight of the past, but the hope of what might still be healed. The days after the confrontation felt different. For the first time in years, Linda's house wasn't just quiet, it was peaceful. She no longer carried the heaviness of unspoken words. Her truth had been laid bare, and her children had heard it. Whether they chose to change was up to them, but she had taken back her dignity. One morning, as sunlight streamed through the kitchen window, she brewed her coffee and sat at the table where so many arguments had once begun. She noticed how still her hands were. They no longer trembled with fear of losing everything. They rested steady, calm, because she knew she had already reclaimed what mattered most, her voice. A week later, her daughter came by. No brochures this time, no binders or sales pitches. She carried only a paper bag filled with groceries. "Mom," she said softly, "I thought I'd cook dinner tonight." "Like you used to for us," Linda smiled, though a part of her remained cautious. They moved around the kitchen together, her daughter chopping vegetables, Linda stirring a pot of soup. The silence between them was gentler now, not heavy but healing. At one point, her daughter paused and whispered, "I'm sorry, Mom. Not just for the house, for forgetting who you are." Linda touched her daughter's hand. It's never too late to remember. Her oldest son visited a few days later, this time without his usual air of authority. He sat in the living room staring at the old family photos. "I used to think strength meant control," he admitted quietly. "Now I see strength looks like you, Mom, working 2 jobs, raising us alone, never complaining. I should have honored that. I didn't." "I will now," Linda listened, her heart softening. She didn't rush to forgive, but she allowed the moment to settle between them, a seed of change taking root. Even the youngest came by one evening, carrying nothing but his guitar. He sat on the porch and played softly the same songs he had practiced as a boy. When he finished, he looked at her and said, "I remember now, Mom. I remember the nights you stayed up with me, cheering me on even when I wasn't good. You never gave up on me. I don't want to give up on you either." Linda's eyes filled with quiet tears. She realized then that her revelation had not only protected the house, it had begun to mend the family, but she also understood something deeper. This was not about property or even about the house itself. It was about dignity, about teaching her children that love without respect was not love at all. One evening, as they all gathered unexpectedly for dinner, Linda looked around the table. For the first time in years, the chairs were filled, the air carried laughter again, and the food tasted like family. Yet she knew things were not magically fixed. Healing takes time. Trust rebuilds slowly. But she saw in their eyes a new recognition, a respect they had once forgotten. After dinner, Linda stood, holding her husband's letter in her hands. She read a line aloud. "One day the children may forget, but you must remember." Then she looked at her children and said, "I remembered, and now I hope you will too." They nodded, each in their own way, and for the first time, she believed they truly understood. Later that night, when the house was quiet again, Linda sat in her favorite chair by the window. The moonlight poured across the floor, silver and soft. She whispered into the night, as if to her husband, "I kept my promise. I protected what we built, not just the house, but the love inside it." And in that moment, she felt a peace she hadn't known in years. Because winning was never about selling or keeping a house. It was never about money or control. It was about dignity, about standing firm without anger, about speaking truth without shouting, about reminding her children that silence can be love, and love can be stronger than betrayal. Linda knew challenges would come again. Life always carried new storms. But she also knew she was no longer afraid. She had faced betrayal and turned it into awakening. She had faced silence and turned it into strength. And as she closed her eyes that night, she smiled softly, knowing that the roots of her family, though shaken, still held. We've just walked through a mother's silence, her heartbreak, and her strength. This story reminds us of something simple. Silence is not weakness. It is love with patience and dignity. A house can be sold, but the roots of family and respect cannot be erased. If you've ever felt forgotten or unappreciated, remember, you are not powerless. Your worth is yours to keep. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. Stay strong, hold on to love, and never forget that your voice matters. Thank you for watching. If this story spoke to your heart, please like, share, and subscribe for more real stories of quiet strength and unexpected justice.